Hi everyone, and welcome to the Vookcast, Australia's Nintendo podcast. My name's Angelo Valdivia, and with me this week are Luke Henderson.
Howdy, howdy.
Daniel Worthington.
G'day.
And Oliver Brandt.
G'day, folks.
We've got a special show lined up for you this week. This week is the 200th episode of the Vookcast and the Vooks 20th anniversary special, all rolled into one. This episode will be split into two halves with different casts. The first half of the show will operate in much of the same way as the normal podcast, and the second half will be all about Vooks turning 20 years old. But first of all, let's turn our attention to some of the Fortnite's biggest topics. So first of all, we've got GameCube controller support which has come to Super Mario 3D All-Stars via an update, which I know people like me are kind of excited about. I haven't actually tested this out myself, but we'll get into the actual story in a moment. Super Mario Sunshine can now be played with a GameCube controller, restoring the ability to use the analog triggers for finer flood control, which is only available in dock mode. Obviously, can't really do that when it's in handheld mode. It requires the GameCube controller adapter. So if people remember from the Super Smash Bros. U days, for the Wii U, there was a little attachment that you could get, a little USB attachment that you could plug into your Wii U, and you could have 4 GameCube controllers hooked up. And it also adds inverted camera controls to the game, which is a godsend for people like me who do play with inverted camera controls in many games. None of us here have tried this new functionality yet, have we?
No.
Nope.
But Paul on the team has, and in the Vooks Slack, he did mention that it works and it seems to work pretty well, which is great. How do we feel about this, guys? Finally adding in a function that probably should have been there from the get-go.
I want to say straight up that I think it's amazing that now the buttons on the screen will match the controller. Because there was the thing that annoyed me. It said X from the GameCube controller, but it didn't support GameCube. So I'm happy that it's in there. I think Mario Sunshine's one of those games that the GameCube controller made sense for. So to have it back in is a wonderful thing. And the fact that we didn't know it was coming is also a big win for people.
Yeah, I think there are two. I think there are two off the top of my head, or maybe actually 3 really, GameCube games that really benefit strongly from using the analog trigger bumpers, whatever you want to call them, from the GameCube, and that's the 2 Metroid Prime games and Sunshine, because the sensitivity on those affects the way you play the game.
Rogue Squadron games.
What do they do in the Rogue? I can't remember what they do in the Rogue Squadron games.
Light press is like boost. Full press is like to switch between the different flight modes. So.
Right, fair enough. Sorry, I interrupted someone before.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as you said, this is something that really should have been in there at the beginning. There really wasn't any reason for them to not have GameCube controller support, apart from the fact that it was probably a little bit rushed out. But it's great that it's there now. It's great that they're adding things to this game that's going to disappear in 4 months.
That's right.
Which is, still a bit weird.
It was interesting that they had to go in and add the functionality, because haven't there been stories of games just happened to have been working with
Mario Tennis is one of them, yeah. If you had the thing plugged in, it worked. So
yeah, there's something weird going on over there.
But again, Mario Tennis was built up for the Switch, and the fact that it supported it was just, sort of a bit of a fluke. Whereas this is an emulated game. So maybe they had to actually code it in there. Maybe it's a secret way of them telling us that GameCube is coming to the Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah. Oh, don't get my hopes up. Don't.
Virtual console.
Oh,
I can hear Ollie's eyes rolling right now.
Bant and Kaitos and F-Zero GX and
But I think the inverted camera controls is good. I understand
Absolutely.
what they were doing with the original release by not having it, because it was initially inverted on Sunshine on the GameCube. So they flipped that, and then obviously that screwed with a lot of people's muscle memory for that game. Not me, because I'd never played it before. But yeah, it definitely screwed a lot of people up. But these kinds of things, they should be options from the get-go. But it's good that they're finally there as well.
It's really frustrating for people like me who do play with inverted controls, flight controls, aiming, just general camera controls and stuff. I mean, that's how I was brought up playing first-person shooter games on the N64 and stuff anyways, and then other games after that. So it is very frustrating that the default is always normal, as they put it, when that's probably our normal from back then anyway. And it's always confusing when that functionality isn't available to be changed from the get-go. And I really wish that, Nintendo, much like the PS5 now and even the Xbox 360 back in the day, you could just go to this menu settings and just flip a switch in there to make it so that way the default in every game that you play has inverted camera controls. It just makes things so much easier. For some reason, that function got removed from the Xbox One, or just was never added to the Xbox One on a firmware level when the system was created. I'm not entirely sure if it's on the Xbox Series X or S at the moment, but it's definitely on PS5 though. And there's a whole bunch of like preset options that you can select on the PS5. Apparently like things like audio, like you can change your audio settings to bring the music down automatically across all of your games and stuff. Things like that really need to be added to
like
other
subtitles
consoles.
on from the get-go. There's nothing more frustrating than like going into a game and then having to sit through like a cutscene at the beginning before you can turn subtitles on.
Or even someone like yourself who is colorblind, right? Like having some colorblind settings or something like that just across the board would be so much simpler.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Anyway, let's get into some Animal Crossing news. So this is just to follow up on a saga that's been part of the Animal Crossing New Horizons narrative this year. Ollie, can you take it away?
Right. So Animal Crossing New Horizons got its end of year update. Well, kind of. It got its November update, let's say, which brought a whole bunch of like stuff for the upcoming Turkey Day and also present Toy Day, I think it is, which is, in every other language called Thanksgiving and Christmas, but for some reason in English we get weird not
more
quite
inclusive.
the same names. Yeah, more inclusive names. Let's call it that.
It's like Easter was Bunny Day or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, Easter was Bunny Day. But like in every other language, it's just what it is. But yeah, so it got that stuff, which is nice. There's new hairstyles. I know that there's a lot of hairstyles that are sort of more aimed towards people of color, which was something that was really sorely missed in the original hair options. So good that those new hairstyles are there. But finally, you can now transfer your island or residents on the island between systems. Now it is a separate app.
That's the caveat we were waiting for.
Yeah, it is a separate app because it's Nintendo and nothing can ever be easy. Basically, you download the app on the source system, so the system that you're already using and the new system, and then you have to open up both of the apps and then say like, this is the target, this is the source, and it transfers stuff over. Now you can transfer your whole island over, just all in one go with all of its residents. So if you've got an old Switch and you're upgrading to one of the red box Switches, or you, like many people, bought an Animal Crossing themed Switch that didn't arrive until after the game came out. If you're planning on using that as your primary Switch and like selling off your old one, you can just transfer all of it at once. But you can also transfer individual people. So if you have, it's a little bit difficult to explain, but basically, if you're a main character on the island, so if you weren't the one who set it up, but you do play on the island, you do have a house there, you can transfer to another island. Now it's not super clear because like none of us has really had the opportunity to test this, if that means then like non-primary characters can now have their own island using the same house and all of that stuff before, or if you can just move that secondary house and character to another island as a secondary character. Again, that's not something we've really had the opportunity to test. So, but like there's options there at least. So basically affects people who have been sharing a system, like, kids, and one of them is the primary player, and then the other sibling has been, player 2 or something like that. Now player 2 can be moved onto their own system with their own island. Yep. Which is good. It's kind of something that should have been there from the beginning. The sort of like the running theme of these two stories is that like it should have been in there from the beginning, and there was absolutely no reason for it not to have been there. Like I know Vook bought an Animal Crossing themed Switch, and it's just been sitting in its box for like I think since May is when he got it, in sort of the second wave of that. So it's just been like sitting in the box for 6 months now, because he hasn't been able to transfer his island, and that kind of sucks. So
I was the exact same way. I got mine in that period as well.
Yeah.
And I only set my new Animal Crossing Switch up like a month ago, sort of late September, because I just went, you know what? I want the better Switch. I want the better battery life. So I just sucked it up and deleted the island. And, I had waited another 6 weeks. Who would have known that I would have been able to do it?
Damn, son. Purged your island.
But they did say that it was coming. Yeah, go on, Daniel.
So have they ever given a reason why they just couldn't do it like a normal game company?
Okay, so basically, they haven't given a reason exactly, but we know the reason why. It's because the save data for Animal Crossing is shared across all users. It's not tied to a particular user. And the tools that exist for transferring save files only exist for individual users now. So that means that you can't transfer this, and you also can't transfer 1-2 Switch. I believe is the only other game that has a universal save file.
I know.
So you can't transfer that.
I know, not 1-2 Switch. Two people still playing that.
So yeah, it's just like purely the way that they set up their save file handling. Which again, like it could have been fixed in a system update literally months ago if they were inclined to do that. But again, it's Nintendo and they're weird, so we had to wait. Jesus, well, 8 months.
Speaking of weird Nintendo news, let's look at the Game & Watch Super Mario Brothers edition. So, funnily enough, there is a bug in the Game & Watch Super Mario Brothers, Game & Watch Super Mario Brothers, which was actually announced and brought to light by Nintendo themselves just a few days before the new device was released. In what's called the Mario Drawing Song, the handheld displays the incorrect translated lyrics if German, French, Italian, or Spanish is selected as the language. It does not affect English, Dutch, and Japanese languages, interestingly enough. Nintendo actually issued an apology about this ahead of time on November 10 and said the error would not affect the launch date of the system, which was November 13. The official statement effectively spoiled one of the system's 35 surprises that have been hinted at in the lead up to launch. Since the device isn't intended to have any sort of connectivity functions to other hardware or the internet, the bug effectively can't be patched, can't be fixed unless, modders went in there and fixed it themselves. Now, I am the only one in this group who does not have a Game & Watch Super Mario Brothers. Daniel seems to have them coming out the wazoo, though. So, and Ollie and Luke also have them. So, I'm going to throw it out to you guys. Have you guys actually tried this out and looked at it for yourself, or does it not really matter because you don't speak those languages anyway?
It doesn't really affect. I honestly, the Game & Watch, I bought it and then I played it for 5 minutes and I'm like, oh yeah, that's neat. Okay, that can go on the shelf now because I've played Mario Brothers 100 million times.
Mine went back in the box. I played it for 5 minutes and put it back in the box.
I mean, it's cool, but
yeah. Unlike these two, I actually have been playing it quite a lot, which is a bit weird to say.
PlayStation what?
Yeah, well, I missed out on pre-orders for both of the next-gen consoles, so here we are.
Oh, so that's why you've been playing
NES
that one.
game instead. But no, I mean, like, I do know quite a bit of German. I'm conversational in German.
Oh.
Not fluent, but conversational. And yeah, like if you go to German, it does display, I think, Italian instead, and then French and Spanish is swapped as well. It's a weird thing, and it just shows that like Nintendo didn't really have anybody outside of Japan test this device. It seems like they kind of just, put it on there and then tested it internally and decided, yep, that's probably fine.
Could have been a problem to do with COVID restrictions, though.
Yeah,
it's hardware. They could have just sent it online to another team or something. I don't know. I don't know how it works.
But yeah, I do like that the Mario Drawing Song is in there. It was something that was included in the, I think, DSi flip note. So it was like a nice little thing there that would like teach you how to draw Mario, and it's back now. And then interestingly, the song for Mario Drawing, this is just a fun bit of trivia, was later used in Super Mario 3D Land on the 3DS. So the music for it was later used in World Special 8, which is like the final stage of the game. So it's not really relevant to this discussion at all, but I really
But it's
like
not dead.
Yeah.
It has been brought back, yeah.
It's a very weird bug.
I love these little hidden things that they do like that, or like.
Well, what are some of the others
like,
that they've got in there in that case?
In this thing?
In the Game & Watch.
You don't have to go through all of them, but what are some? Have you guys found any yourselves?
I think a lot of it's just like the sleep screen and stuff like that.
Yeah, so a lot of it is the sleep screen. You can actually switch to Luigi's head in the ball game by holding B, I think, when you launch it up. One of the things like that, which is a neat little thing.
So for someone like me, for someone like me who doesn't have it then, so what is significant about this? Like, apart from the fact that you can play Super Mario Brothers on it, which is the reason why I didn't get it, because I didn't need to spend $100, $150, $200, whatever, on another device that just played Super Mario Brothers. So what else can this thing do? I know that it's got a clock and stuff like that, which is a hint towards old Game & Watches, which also doubled as a clock, which was kind of revolutionary at the time.
Well, it has a second game in there from Japan.
What is the second game?
It does have the Lost Levels or Super Mario Brothers 2.
Yes, okay. Super Mario Brothers 2.
The game that I called the worst Super Mario Brothers game when we were talking about bad Mario games a few podcasts ago.
Yeah, go back a couple episodes.
At the end of the day, it is pure nostalgia bait. It's for people who had Game & Watches as children or played other sort of like silly little LCD games like that, except you can play a proper game on it, which isn't going to be for everybody, and I would say probably isn't worth $80 because that's quite a lot to spend on something that is just a small LCD screen. It's not really much of anything. Like there's no real reason to get it beyond like this is a cool thing that Nintendo's put together.
Because that's the thing that I was thinking about was like when that got announced, I'm like, oh yeah, I could buy this device that has a tiny screen and inconveniently try to play Super Mario Brothers, or I could just go straight to my Switch, which has a screen like 30 times bigger and stuff. Not to poo-poo the device because it does look kind of cool and cute and things, and it's a nice little conversation piece to kind of put up on your shelf or something. But like at the same time, it's like $80 for just 1-2 games. Really, it's kind of like, I don't know. That's just my opinion as someone who has fallen out of things like collector's editions and paperweight statues and things like that.
Yeah, my biggest thing with this, and the reason it went back in the box, is just because it's so small. I knew it was going to be small. When I picked it up, I went, it's nice, but it's just too small for me to play it. And while it's great to have it sitting on the shelf on display, it'll just collect dust. I just put it back in the box just to protect it. For the once in a blue moon, I do actually want to play it. I'll get it back out again. But because it is so small, it is something that I can't physically play that well because it's so much smaller. It's about, maybe 80% the size of an NES controller and the screen's on there. So, yeah, it's just a little bit too awkward for me to play. That's the only reason I'm not playing it anymore.
Need to be 7 years old again, Luke. That's the problem.
Yeah, I can do the voices of a 7-year-old, but unfortunately, I don't have the hands of a 7-year-old.
The size of this, the size of the Game & Watches, they were perfect for those style of games where there's not much sort of going on in them. They're just, I don't know, that's sort of a disservice to those games, and there's not much going on in them, but they are very simple games to play. So it's okay having a small screen, not much sort of real estate for your hands because you're not doing much. But with Mario, there is, you're sort of doing a lot more than a lot of the basic sort of just moving back and forward for some of the old Game & Watches. And I think that's my big disappointment with this is like I would have rathered, a device that had like the original Game & Watch Super Mario Brothers, which is its own sort of unique game that's never sort of been ported, hasn't come out in any of the Game & Watch gallery games. As opposed to Super Mario Brothers, which is like this would be getting up to like almost the 10th time they've sort of done this, like re-released it, wouldn't it, by now?
Probably the 35th.
Pretty close to it, yeah.
But, and since this came out, and then I actually started playing my Game & Watches again and realized, these are actually really fun games. I'm enjoying them, or playing the Game & Watch gallery on the 3DS Virtual Console, and I'm like, I just want a collection of these, please. Just give me all of these.
Maybe one of the secrets is that the Mario Brothers game is on the Game & Watch. Maybe that's one of the secrets.
The thing has been hacked open already, and people sort of...
Oh, it was already hacked before it even came out, right? Someone had a hands on it and already hacked it.
Somebody got it 2 days early and hacked it.
So nothing's sort of been revealed about what's in it. I think they've done experiments with homebrew, and even that they're finding, it's probably like... I think like the data input for the USB C can't even sort of receive data, so it's not saying that people will be able to... They cut
the data lines, so it's purely just the power lines that go through to it.
That's interesting.
It's like
sneaky, very sneaky Nintendo. I think that to really make this worthwhile, it should have had, like, they should have absolutely like made it a Super Mario thing for the 35th anniversary. But really, like, to make it more worthwhile, that it should have had like a way larger selection of Game & Watch games on it. It would have made so much more sense.
There was, I think you're looking at about 10-ish Mario-themed Game & Watch games. Like, there's Cement Factory, Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers, the Bombs Away one, which is Mario in like a Vietnam War sort of setting, like dropping bombs or something on the enemy soldiers.
Absolute classic, of course, yes.
Yeah. And there's actually a distinct original version of Mario the Juggler, whereas instead of doing that, they've just gone, oh no, here's the original version of Bull, but with Mario's obscenely large, weird-looking head. There's all these actual, original Mario-themed games that have never sort of, at least a few of them have never been ported ever again, and would be just good to be able to play them.
Yeah, it's an interesting device. It's one of those, I feel like it's one of those things where Nintendo, much like, the NES and the Super Nintendo, really went hard sort of on this little device that's just, to really tug on that nostalgia for a lot of older fans and things. But it just seems to be quite a misstep. Like, it's not one that really set the world on fire like the SNES Mini or the NES Mini.
The thing is, I don't think this is the end of it either. I think like next year it's the 35th anniversary of Zelda. So I think we're probably going to get a Game & Watch Zelda as well, with the original Zelda and probably even Zelda 2 in basically the same form factor. I
mean, given the packaging has everything on like a plastic, all the decorative stuff's on a plastic slip. It's like even the box art, the generic box art is pretty basic and easy to swap out for Zelda stuff. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. And, there's other things they could do. They could do it for Metroid. They could do it for, I don't know, if they decide to ever do Kid Icarus again, then maybe they'll do it for that. I don't know. But
can it run F-Zero GX?
I
mean, like, I think the hardware technically could, but you're probably asking a lot of it there.
Donkey Kong 94.
These the analog triggers, probably. Donkey Kong 94, yes.
Well, that's the other thing, right? Is that like this is basically the closest we've gotten to like a Game Boy Mini to date, and like I think it's more than capable of playing Game Boy games because it's playing NES games. So, why aren't we getting Game Boy or Game Boy Color or Game Boy Advance games?
How much was the NES Mini? That was like $100, wasn't it?
$90 or $100. Yeah. No, it was $100 because the SNES was $120.
And this was like, I'd say 80 odd.
Yeah, it was $80.
So it's like, $20 less. Yeah, it's portable, but then you're only getting 3 games compared to like, however many was on the NES Mini. And it's just, I think
there's a lot. Yeah,
I love the idea of it. I would love to, just be able to play more of it. But it's like, it's a game that doesn't super interest me outside of the Mario 35 thing at the moment.
Honestly, they really needed to think about it a bit more, because it's a great idea, but they didn't execute it the way that it should have been done.
And that's what I mean by it just seems like a bit of a misstep. Could have been COVID related. Maybe they just pressed for time or something like that. But
it also ties back to the Mario 35 stuff, is because that seems to be their thing with this. Celebrating 35 years of Mario is a great idea, but they haven't executed almost anything correctly with it. So
it has felt like a bit of a weak year.
The only real thing that they'll be doing particularly well with the 35th anniversary celebrations is 3D World when that eventually comes out, because that looks to have been completely redone and new areas and stuff like that. So
yeah. Interesting times, an interesting situation. But let's move on. Let's move into games that we've been playing. Who would like to go first?
I'll start off with this because I've only been playing a couple of things. Okay, so aside from the Game & Watch, which I mentioned I've been playing a little bit of, I've also been playing for review Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory on Switch, which is a rhythm game based on the music of Kingdom Hearts. I could go on about this for days, and it would quite likely be a really long review. The review's going up on both Maxi Geek and Vooks the day after the Maxi Geek one goes up. So you'll definitely be able to find it. But I have complex thoughts about this. Like, it's a good enough game. I would say it's a worthy successor to the Theatrhythm games, which were really fantastic rhythm games on the 3DS. But I don't really like the way that they decided to make this, the next step in the Kingdom Hearts saga. Because frankly, it just needs to end already.
So basically, if I can just quickly interrupt, so like pretty much all of the Kingdom Hearts games are canon in some way, right? In some weird, goofy, unintelligible way. Is this also the case?
Yeah, this is absolutely also the case. This takes place immediately after the secret ending of Kingdom Hearts 3. So this is the next kind of thing. But I will say, like, just if you're only in this for the story, like, don't bother. Like, if rhythm games aren't your thing and you just want to see the story, look it up on YouTube, because it's literally just like, I think it was 9.5 minutes of story, and that's it. That's the entire stuff that you get. So it's really not worth it just for the story alone. It is a fun game if you like, music. They do some really interesting things with like displaying and interacting with that music. But other than that, like, it's a spin-off Kingdom Hearts game with 10 minutes of canon story at the end, which
Personally, I think they would have been better off to call it like Theatre Rhythm Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, if they'd actually named it that, and like they have the little, like on the loading screens, they have the little, Theatre Rhythm style, GB characters. So I don't know why they didn't,
There's precedent for that, like the Dragon Quest Theatre Rhythm game that only came out in Japan. That was, I think, was called Theatre Rhythm Dragon Quest. So
yeah. So it's weird that, like, in moving to the Switch, they've decided to just not name it that at all.
Well, they've also got Dissidia, like they're not strangers to making sub-franchises out of their franchise. Like, Dissidia does the same thing with all of the Final Fantasy characters.
Yeah.
The other thing, too, though, is this is also hitting the other consoles as well, so maybe that's why they dropped it.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It is also on PS4 and PS5 and the Xboxes and stuff like that.
Even then, I'm pretty sure Theatre Rhythm is an arcade game in Japan.
It is
as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but in terms of at-home experiences, it's locked to the DS.
But apart from that, I'll have my review up for that in the next few days. It's going to be a real long one, so enjoy. I've also
is it just like Kingdom Hearts music, or is there a good chunk of Disney music in there?
There is a fairly decent chunk of Disney music in there. It's mostly unlockables and stuff, but like I've played Let It Go more times than I can count now.
Nice.
And there's also Part of Your World from The Little Mermaid, and
nice.
A few other ones that I just can't really remember.
Party Boppers, yes.
Is there like a Tron Legacy stuff?
No.
Tron Legacy.
There is. Well, because Tron Legacy was in
Dream Drop Distance. Yeah. So
you can't really sing along to Daft Punk's. Wow.
Yeah, but doing like like a controller based rhythm game, that would be awesome.
I will say the Tron songs that are in there, like obviously they're not from the movies, they are the original compositions that they made for it, are absolutely awful to play as rhythm games because they are like erratic and electrical and weird and slightly offbeat notes, and it's just like, well, how the hell am I supposed to like tap along to this? It's just not possible. So
Cool.
again, full review going up sometime in the next few days. I've also been playing Yakuza 0 on
Yes.
PC because I've seen like so much stuff from Like a Dragon recently, and I really want to play it, but I was like, I don't know if I can really justify spending $100 on a new Yakuza game when I've got 3 other Yakuza games already in my Steam library. So I asked around and people were like, oh yeah, you should play 0 first and then Kiwami 1 and Kiwami 2. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do exactly that. So here we are with me playing my first Yakuza game, which I've never done before. And it is so stupid.
It's fantastic.
And so silly.
It's so good.
It seems like it's going to be like all serious. And then like you go do karaoke and it changes into like this insane like metal band transformation stuff, and it's like, this is the silliest thing I've ever seen, but I've loved every moment so well. So
yeah, man, it's like Neon Genesis Evangelion, where it's super just melodramatic and stuff, but you know, what's her name has a penguin for a housemate. Like,
yeah,
why not?
It's one of those things where it's like, you know, only Japan could have made something just this tonally bizarre, and I think it's fantastic.
I love it.
Is there meant to be a Fist of the North Star Yakuza game?
Yeah, there is. I don't know if that got localized, but it definitely exists at the very least. Which is just a Fist of the North Star game with Yakuza mechanics, which, like, why the hell wouldn't you enjoy that?
Nice.
Yeah, that's me.
Daniel, what about you? What have you been playing?
Not much. Just really, I've been playing more of Outer Worlds, but talked about that last time. Just lots of Pokemon Go, which is probably my main sort of go-to game in all aspects of life at the moment, because it's all encompassing and there's just always too much stuff to catch and all that. This week, though, they've just started the trial program for the... They announced a few weeks ago that they are going to increase the level cap to level 50. It's currently at 40, and I was apparently one of the lucky ones to get into the trial program, so I'm currently working towards level 41. At the moment, it's not based on XP. It's more based on doing a series of tasks. Like one of the tasks was to catch 200 Pokemon in one day. I think
all of us are just like, oh.
I mean, I know I probably go a bit hard on it. I had that done in like 2 hours before I went to the gym on Friday.
Oh my god!
So I have a pretty good area where I live. I've got some parks around, so I just went for a walk around the park. And then I also set my gotcha on while I'm on the treadmill. And I usually just catch heaps, so it's like easy. The really rough one that I've got at the moment is I need to do 30 raids.
Need to.
Which to do this, I have to.
I'll stop poo-pooing in the game. I'm sorry.
And like I know people who've got it who they had that done on the first day, and I'm like, how much money are you spending on this game? Just because, you know, you get one free raid pass a day. So to do those 30 raids, you're obviously going to have to start buying premium raid passes or remote raid passes. So it's a bit, you know, there's been a lot of that more money-hungry stuff creeping into Pokemon Go lately. Like with the mega raids, to get mega Pokemon, you have to raid, which requires you to spend money. And I know a lot of this stuff has sort of been pushing a lot of the core... Well, a lot of the people from my group who play it, some of them are just like, no, I'm not spending money on this game anymore. It's just, it used to be fun to play without spending any money on it. Which is, if you want to do a free-to-play game, that's how you need to do it. You need to make it so you can play without having to spend money, and you want to spend money just to sort of enhance your experience, I guess. And it's a shame that they've been creeping this way, because with all the COVID measures that they've been doing this year, they've actually made the game so much more playable than it's ever been. And a bunch of really good events as well. But then just, oh yeah, now you've got to do all these raids, or just...
Oh, now you have to pay $10 to reset the counter to transfer your Pokemon to Pokemon Home.
That is that is the worst. You know, everyone was looking forward to the home integration coming, because it's like, yes, I've got like 30 shiny Seedots. And I'm like, I don't need 30 of these dumb things, but I want to just trade them to Pokemon Home so I can put them to Pokemon Sword and then just one to trade them away because I'm like, I like the idea of just some kid just randomly trading off a Pokemon and then getting like a shiny in return or something. Just to put like some good karma back out in the world. But yeah, it's like, no, yeah, you can trade like 4 or 5 of your shinies a week. And then if you want to do more, give us $10. And it's like, that said, I'm not sure if that's going to be completely on Niantic or if it's also part of it's on
the Pokemon company.
Yeah, because I think that they don't want the game to be flooded with shinies either.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a little bit of both, but like it was not surprising hearing it from Niantic because that's what Niantic has been doing lately. And,
just I think the worst like, with communication.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's sort of about it for me at the moment. Hopefully, hopefully I'll get to level 41 soon. But apparently that's all going to go live, I think, for everyone else in December, early December or something, I'm thinking.
Mid-December, they said. So yeah.
Cool.
It'll be interesting. Hopefully get a lot of older people back to the game. So, yeah.
What about you, Luke? What have you been playing? So you've got a lot of stuff on the list here.
Yeah, like normal. Every time I do this, my list seems to be twice as large as everyone else's. So I finished off Sackboy Big Adventure, which is the Little Big Planet sort of spin-off platformer. I've been playing some Devil May Cry 5 Definitive Edition on PS5 as well. And then started playing Immortals Phoenix Rising on the Xbox. And also finished off the Serious Sam collection this morning on the Switch.
Nice.
Thankfully, I was lucky enough to receive a code and I redeemed it and everything before it got delayed by NOE. Yeah. So once it was delayed, you couldn't redeem the codes. So there was something going on with it on the back end as well.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, the entire listing was just wiped. So it'll probably get a new NSU ID as well when it eventually comes out.
Probably. So yeah, so I've been playing that, and my review for that will go up on Maxi Geek tomorrow, along with Sackboy.
Interesting.
And if you're a Serious Sam fan, it's been fun. The first 2 games especially look amazing because they're old games and they've already been given the HD treatment. The third one is unfortunately spotty in its presentation. There's a lot of pop in and some slowdown effects, but it's still very playable. It's definitely not as bad as the Outer Worlds. So yeah, if you're looking for just mind-numbing shooters where you can just mow down hordes of aliens, all 3 of the games are worth it. So.
How is Sackboy? I've been kind of curious about that game. I do like a good platformer.
I like a good platformer. This is an okay platformer. Everyone else that's raving on it, they keep going, oh, it's so beautiful. It's this, it's that. It's like, yeah. The thing that I don't like about it is it's slow. Like running around a Sackboy is slow. At the end of the levels, when you finish, it has a button that says hold to fast forward. The game knows it itself that it's slow. Coming out of a level when it does the reveal to the next location on the map, that's slow. It lets you skip it. So the game knows it is very slow, and unfortunately it sort of limits the fun that I was having with it. It's a beautiful looking game, and Sackboy thankfully doesn't float like he does in Little Big Planet. So, you can actually do some proper platforming, but yeah, it's just a bit too slow for my liking.
Is there any of the creation stuff from the other?
No, there's costumes, but that's it.
Okay.
It's definitely not Little Big Planet, platformer. It's more platformer inspired by Little Big Planet.
What was that other platformer that they made? I was thinking about it. Tearaway. So is it a bit sort of like that?
So that was Media Molecule. This is done by Sumo Digital, who did the third Little Big Planet, and they're the ones that did Snake Pass on the Switch. They've done the last 2 Sonic racing games. They did Crackdown 3. So as a developer, they seem to be a bit all over the place in what they work on. But yeah, this one is definitely not Little Big Planet. So if you're expecting, custom levels that you can make, there's none of that.
Okay.
Well, I've also been playing the PS5, quite enjoying it. I skipped out on the Xbox. I am not made of money, unfortunately, so I had to only do one console this generation launch. But I'm quite happy with the PS5. The reason why I went with the PS5 just because it seems to be more feature rich with everything that's going on. The Xbox seems great, but it just seems to be a more enhanced version of the Xbox experience. So for my reasoning, I was like, I'm gonna go with PlayStation 5. The DualSense looks interesting. The way that they're changing up the way the hardware works seems really interesting as well. And some of the functionality of the hardware, of the system itself has been really cool. Like the when you press the PlayStation button and the little, what do they call it? The cards? Something cards? What are they calling those, Luke?
Cards.
Just cards? Okay. So yeah, those, whatever. They actually, depending on the PS5 game that you play, actually give you like shortcuts to different things within a game. So for example, Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales, which I've been playing on the PS5 and just finished a few days ago, 4 or 5 days ago, and reviewed for Luke's site, MaxiGeek. Like to be able to, instead of having to go from one end of the city to the other to get your, side mission thingamajiggies, you can literally just push the PlayStation button and it gives you a list of your cards that you haven't done yet. And it's basically just like a list of things you haven't completed. And it tells you like how far in you have to go on that side quest, how long in time it will take you, like another 20 minutes or so. And you can just like push a button and resume that side quest. So it could just like pull you around in the game really, really smoothly, which is very useful for...
It's just a table of content really for the game. Just show
right.
Instead of it being like a wiki page where, there's this side mission. So you go to wikis or IGN wikis, whatever, and you have to type in what you're looking for. And it says, shows you 9 different screens about where you should be looking. This just takes you straight to it. And it cuts out all that unnecessary searching.
Yeah, and for something like, this was only for smaller games, obviously, but for something for like The Witcher, for example, if there was a new Witcher or another huge RPG game, like maybe even Cyberpunk or something like that, for the PS5 version of that, when you lose track of your side missions or something, you can just load that up, find the one that you're up to. It'll tell you how far you got into it and how much time you have left, and you can choose whether or not you want to spend the time doing that day or some other time. So that's been really cool. But anyway, I digress. Miles Morales itself.
Witcher 3 is coming to PlayStation 5.
That's right. There is an upgrade to that one. Miles Morales. Really enjoying that one, actually. It's much shorter than the previous Spider-Man game. The previous Spider-Man game is like, 20, 25 hours for the main story. This game's only about 3 or 4, depending on how long you take to play it. If you want to do all the side missions.
It was an expansion.
That's right, yeah. But if you wanted to do all the side missions and stuff, easily take you 9 to 10 hours. But the game itself pretty much runs the same way as the other Spider-Man game. The main difference is just what Miles can do. So he's got his own little set of powers like electricity or venom powers they call it, which is kind of confusing to me as someone who grew up.
It's confusing for anyone who's a Marvel fan.
Yeah, exactly, with Venom, the character. But he's also got invisibility, which is cool for some of the stealthy stuff. Great costumes to unlock. Really interesting characters that I liked in the game. I thought the tone and the direction that they went in with this particular Spider-Man story was really great. It's a much younger Spider-Man story. Goes back to that origin sort of thing where he's just starting out, figuring out what kind of Spider-Man, what kind of hero he wants to be. So it's really, really cool.
That's why they created Miles back whenever
2006.
Yeah.
It was just a way to reinvent
was he
Spider-Man.
that long? It was...
So it's just a great way to reinvent Spider-Man and also just give some more representation as well. And I think despite the fact that, that he's a black Spider-Man, I think just the fact that he's also Hispanic just really adds to that. And it gives him more, makes him just more interesting as a character, just making him a little more diverse in that way. Like, his father is black and his mother's Latina, and just the kind of like dynamic in the way that he speaks to other people as well. Like he speaks Spanish fluently and all these types of things with other characters. And he also can do sign language, as we find with another character in the game. So yeah, I really enjoyed that game. I think it's a great game. Probably not.
I love that they...
Probably not worth the money, but
It's on PS4 as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is on PS4.
It is, yeah.
Is there a pack where you can get both games?
Not on PS4. On PS5, you can buy the game and pay extra and get the remastered PS4 version of Spider-Man, which, to be honest, seeing as some games are on PS4 and then they just work on PS5, I don't know if you can call it remastered at this point. But I do like that they cut out those annoying base things. You take out 10 guys in a room, and then wave 2 starts and you got to do it all over again. I like that that's gone from Miles.
Those were annoying.
Yeah. So they listened to feedback and they made some significant changes that improved the overall player experience, which I liked.
Yeah. And I've also been playing Half-Life Alyx on the Oculus Quest 2, which I got a few weeks ago. My only real foray into VR was PlayStation VR, and I got that like mid last year. And it's been fine, but it's a little bit of a chore to sort of dig out, and it does feel a little janky at points. It mostly works okay. I actually prefer to play Beat Saber on PSVR than I do on Oculus Quest, just because I found that the move controllers are a lot more weighty, and it feels better to sort of, wave lightsabers around, whereas with Oculus Quest 2, the hand controllers are just so light. It just doesn't feel like I'm waving anything at all in my hands. It feels just, I don't know, really kind of loose and not quite as accurate. But anyway, Half-Life Alyx. I've been connecting it to my computer via virtual desktop, which is like a local Wi-Fi app that you can get on the Oculus Quest 2. And it connects to your PC, and you can basically play any Oculus or any real VR game, even through Steam VR and stuff like that.
Yeah, so your Quest 2 becomes a Steam VR unit, which instead of being the 50, 60 games on there, becomes like 600.
And it works really quite well. I mean, there have been some moments where it does sort of wig out a little bit, like I'll be playing and then it just starts freaking out for a second and then it goes back to normal. But I think that's probably more to do with my Wi-Fi connection, because my computer is standalone and it's connecting wirelessly to my router and modem, which is also connecting wirelessly to the Oculus Quest. So it works pretty well, but I think there is a little bit of some wireless issues going in there. And
they do sell a dedicated cable. So if you want to connect
but
through a cable,
super expensive, and I bought that. And as soon as I bought it, I'm like, I probably shouldn't have bought this. It was like $130 for a USB-C cable. But at least I future-proof myself in case I need it for anything else. But yeah, very good game. Really enjoying that. Much spookier than I thought it would be, but also not quite as spooky as I thought it would be. So it's in that weird middle ground where I walk into a dark room and I'm like, oh, get ready for scares. And then I walk through and I'm like, oh, I scared myself more than the game scared me. So, oh well.
Like visiting Ravenhall for the first time.
Yeah, like that, exactly. All right, let's get into the Fortnight Forecast and get towards wrapping this up. So, Fortnight Forecast between tomorrow, which is roughly when the podcast will come out, Monday the 23rd of November, and December the 6th, which will be the date that we record the next podcast. On December 1st, we have Chronos Before the Ashes and Empire of Sin. I was about to say Empire of the Sun. December 2, we have Sam and Max Save the World Remastered. December 3, we have Immortals Phoenix Rising. And December 4, we've got quite a few here. We've got John Wick Hex, Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon, and The Blade of Light, which is the NES re-release that we talked about last episode or a couple episodes ago. And Commandos 2 HD Remaster. Are there any here that anyone's particularly looking forward to? I know Fire Emblem's going to be a pretty big one.
I'm looking forward to Immortals Phoenix on Switch.
Yeah, that's probably like the big one there for me. I quite like Ubisoft's output of games, so Immortals should be an interesting look.
I fell in love with Starlink, and I've sort of been looking for another Ubisoft game like that just to muck around with on the Switch.
I'm keen to see how Sam and Max goes, because these are the if you remember on the Wii, when they were doing the episodic games,
right?
Telltale. This is those that what they do the Bomberman
Strong Bad's
that's
cool
him.
game for
and then
people.
they did the Monkey Island.
Oh, that Monkey Island one looks so rough on the Wii.
So
everything went rough on the Wii.
I downloaded it and I was so excited for it. And I'm like, no.
But this one is one of the guys from Telltale Games set up another studio. They got the rights to them and they're remastering all of the Sam and Max games from the Wii. So it's not just a one and done. There'll be 3 in the series once it's all completed.
And Luke, you can probably talk more about Immortals Phoenix Rising next episode in that case.
Yes, next episode I definitely can. This episode I cannot.
Excellent.
I can talk about John Wick Hex though, because I did get a chance to talk to the devs at E3 last year, and I have played the game on PC. And it is a fantastic game, and it is very John Wick. The visuals are obviously a bit weird. It's a bit of sort of a motion-y comic thing. But if you're at all into turn-based games, John Wick Hex is definitely a game you need to look into, because it uses time rather than lose. It's just a fun game. So
cool. All right. Well, let's wrap things up there for the cast section of this episode. So before we usher in the next crew, which actually Ollie will be part of, Luke, where can people find you online?
They can find me everywhere at Renderman7, and then they can find me everywhere else with MaxiGeek. So just Maxi-Geek.
Awesome. And what about you, Daniel?
Twitter, Worth Nintendo. that's sort of about it. You can go look at my old video touching is good stuff that I used to do for the site, and I probably should get around to doing again one day, but there's not really much interest for DS stuff. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Could be interesting.
Or any of the probably 150 old episodes of this podcast I used to be on.
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Go back in time. Well, guys, thanks for being part of episode 200 of the Vookcast, and we'll be right back after this short break. Hey, listeners. Before we get into the 20th anniversary segment, I want to introduce a very special message from our previous Vookcast host, Stephen Impson, where he gives us a look back on the history of the show and how it's changed since its start well over a decade ago. Unfortunately, he couldn't be with us to record the episode, but I'm still very grateful he's able to be part of it. Take it away, Stephen.
Hey, it's Stephen Impson. You might recognize my voice if you've been around for a while. I used to host the podcast after my good friend James stepped down from hosting duties. You probably don't recognize me from the very first episode of the Vookcast from 2006, though. I was 17 and didn't think to tell my parents I was going to be recording something, so you can hear me awkwardly telling my dad to get out when he came in to ask me something. Good times. The show started as a little project among the community on Vooks forums. Podcasting was new and exciting in 2007, and nobody had really worked out the rules of how to make a good show. We just worked it out as best we could at the time. We had such amazing segments as Tonka of the Week and Noob of the Week, and some music guessing game from memory, and yeah, we really just tried the best we could to be fun and cover Nintendo games in a sort of chat format. Plenty of people helped with the show back then. I was only a very, very occasional guest to begin with, but I'd be remiss not to mention Spirit Cubed, Anthony, Vook, and Daniel Flame Condor Worthington, though he goes by Worthintendo these days. They really started the show from nothing. There would be no Vookcast if not for them. At a certain point, the show became the James and Daniel Worthintendo show, and they kept the fire burning for years before I jumped on as a regular guest in around 2012. We swapped hosting and editing duties, gave regular greetings and salutations, refined the format, and kept covering Nintendo from an Australian perspective. I honestly count this whole period as some of the most fun that I've had in podcasting in my entire life, really. We played around with the idea of VCR episodes or Vookcast critical reviews, where we revisited significant games from the past to find out how they held up these days and give a little modern perspective on old classics and forgotten gems. I love getting little tidbits of information that James and Daniel had hidden away about these games, and these episodes really just pushed me to play some absolute gems like Project Zero 2 and Kirby's Canvas Curse, stuff that I never would have bothered playing with otherwise, as great as I'd heard that they were. I took over general hosting duties in around about 2016, and we had a rotating cast between then and when I stepped down from the show. We experimented with live podcasting for an episode immediately after the Switch announcement, at the time broadcast to our quite new Discord community. We found that none of us were particularly expert live performers, but we had a bit of fun and it was hopefully all right for everyone listening. They seemed to enjoy it. For a while, things kept plodding along. James came back on when he could, and we added some new cast members in Chris, Luke, Josh, Mel, Tori, Lila. Hopefully no one I've forgotten, but I'm sure I have. And we did one last live recording at PAX Australia back in a time when conventions were still a thing that you could go to. I bowed out of the show in about 2019. For various reasons, I wasn't able to keep the show going and keep it as fun as it had been in the past. Things got a bit bogged down and I really didn't want the show to suffer, so it went dormant for a while. Thankfully, Angelo, your current host, messaged me and asked if I was happy for him to revive the show for 2020, to which I gave him an enthusiastic go the hell ahead, my friend. I'm really glad I was able to be part of the Vookcast in various ways over that span of, 14 or so years, and the tight-knit Vooks community that was so very important to me growing up and even now. I made lifelong friends, found a robust group of people to chat games with, learned to have a passion for podcasting, and had a hell of a good time talking news, opinions, old games with the crew who were gracious enough to share the show with me. If you want to find out what I'm up to these days, I have another podcast I work on with Chris called Mobile Arcade Club. It's all about games on Apple Arcade if you're interested in that. I also write for a bunch of sites when I get the opportunity to, and probably the best way to keep up with that would be to find me at Twitter at Stephen Impson, StevenImpson. I'm a little sad I can't be part of the podcast so much anymore, but I'm happy to know the show's in good hands with Angelo. I just want to finish by thanking James and Daniel, who really kept the show alive for so long and brought me on to begin with. The show genuinely would not exist without you two. But now it's time to wrap this up tighter than a burrito. See you all out there on the internet.
And we're back and ready to focus on the fact that Vooks turns 20 years old this year. On the panel for the second half of this episode are Oliver Brandt.
G'day, folks.
Chris Button.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Andrew Searles.
Hey everyone.
And the Vooks mother brain, Daniel Vukovic.
Hey, how you going?
All right, so we are all here today to talk about the 20th anniversary of Vooks.net, Australia's longest running Nintendo website. Now, the first section of this discussion, I want to point it towards Dan, but anyone can jump in here whenever they feel they're ready to. Dan, the site first opened on October 16, 2000, which is quite a long time now.
Yeah.
So for me, I remember that the day before that quite well because that was my 12th birthday. My birthday is on October 15th. So to be able to remember a time before Vooks, explicitly the day before, I don't know, is kind of odd to me. But so going back to the beginning of Vooks then, so why did you start the site?
Well, I guess there's kind of two reasons. First was I wanted to be a web developer of some sort, and I needed something to make a website for. Now, that's the boring, I guess, personal reason. The other reason is because at that time, when I got on the internet on dial-up at that time, it was like, where do you go to find Nintendo news? Nintendo's website, no. There's 4 or 5 forums scattered around with a lot of hearsay and like, oh, my friend works at EB or Big W and he says this. And there was no real central repository of knowledge and no like Australian focused Nintendo stuff was still in magazines. I'm sure there was sites out there, but if I couldn't find them, so how could anyone else? So
and that would have been right in the heyday. Well, that was right in the heyday of Australian or just gaming mags in general. Like I remember Nintendo Gamer or N Gamer magazine and stuff around the time as well. But there wasn't a whole lot that was central to Australia though, right?
No, I think at that point NMS had stopped. I think that stopped in 98. I think maybe because it was no, it would have been 2000 because the last one had Tomb Raider for the Game Boy on the cover for some reason. And then the Nintendo official magazine didn't come around for a while, but I think N64 Gamer had turned into Nintendo Gamer by then. Apart from that, even that had not N64 Gamer, but any other magazine apart from Hyper pretty much just had UK recycled stuff as well. So.
Yeah. Would you say that you dodged a bullet by not making a Sega fan site?
Yeah, but I don't think that was ever going to happen because, at some point I got introduced to the Dreamcast. One of my cousin's cousin or something like that got one from Japan and we played Sonic Adventure 2 or the first one, and it was just like, wow, that's really good. But like, I was still, I'm playing Perfect Dark. I don't care.
So how old would you have been around that time then? 2000?
14.
14. So you have been manning like Australia's biggest Nintendo site since you were 14 years old. That's pretty incredible to think about, really.
Yeah, I can't remember a time before doing my website. It's always been... I can remember when I was younger, obviously, but I can't... Yeah, I was a kid, so I don't remember that much.
All right, well, so what's been some of the challenges of keeping Vooks running for 20 years?
Company called Ant, starting with N. I mean that with all the respect in the world, but that, over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of ups and lots of downs. When we started, the GameCube hadn't been released yet, and we're still kind of into that, covering that. The Game Boy Advance started that. I didn't even bother covering the N64s. You could tell the writing was on the wall by that. The Dolphin rumors were getting really good by then. The game, so long ago, the GameCube may have even been announced, but because of the power delay back then, who knows? And then we went. What's after that? The DS. The DS and the Wii were like, hey, this running a website thing is actually pretty cool, and you can travel for it and do interviews, and the media want to make games for it. And then the Wii U came out as well, so it's up, down, up, down. We're currently on up, and we'll see how Nintendo goes with the Switch. So actually, they haven't stuffed it up yet.
Well, going on from that, then, at what point do you feel like the site really, I don't want to say stable, but at least felt like it was something people took notice of, like, whether you want to say respected, or at least even just on a level where Nintendo took the site sort of seriously? Nintendo Australia, that is, obviously.
Yeah, so the thing is, when I started the site, I did reach out to Nintendo Australia, as a kid going, hey, give me stuff. I, like, probably not in the most professional way. But at that time, Nintendo didn't acknowledge media sites, anything online, unless you were a magazine or a book or making a TV show. They didn't cover online media. Like, even like IGN and that had struggles with contact Nintendo for stuff. We got our first review game from Activision in 2004. Once about 2005, I'd say, just when the Wii was starting to, like, we were covering the Wii pretty well. That's when Nintendo got on board, I think. And that's probably when you don't need Nintendo support to do a website or be a YouTuber or anything like that, but it does help. So I mean,
Nintendo are notoriously, like, difficult to sort of get quote unquote trust with, right? To be able to get review games and things.
Yeah, they don't just hand them out willy nilly because people leak things, and Nintendo is a big target for that. Like, was the most recent one, Sword and Shield. Someone in the US handed that out to a friend or something, and then no one else got it. And until release day, they were like, no one else is having it. So it still happens. So they probably went too far with the trusting, and then now they've pulled it back again.
Well, so what are some of the highlights in that case over your time? So 20 years, it could be anything to do with console launches or anything like that, but what are some big highlights of running Vooks?
Yeah, so tying back to when Nintendo, or when people started taking it seriously, or I think it was when a lot of the other sites fell away or joined with us, and there was only one person or one place still going. I mean, there's always other people covering Nintendo in Australia. I'm not the only guy. We're not the only site, but a lot of them were, as I was at the time, just a kid in their parents' house, running a forum, running a board, running a blog, and people grow and change and leave it behind. But I think when I wanted to go to E3, and I saved up and paid for it all myself without any help of any publisher or brand or anything like that, that's when I think people kind of took it seriously. And also that's when I expanded my contacts, I guess, and actually met people that you would talk on email and they wouldn't know if you were, like, legit or anything. I mean, that's when I first met. There's always trips to Melbourne and stuff like that, but meeting some of the bigger publisher PR people that are in Sydney and stuff like that. And that's when, because I was 19 when I went to E3 by myself in 2006, which was the best E3, I think. Still, maybe I'm biased, but
well, that was so. I have good memories of that one as well, because that was when they unveiled the Wii as the Wii, right? And they had that big demonstration where Miyamoto came out and he was conducting the Wii Music Orchestra before Wii Music was a thing, and all these types of things, and Mario Galaxy and Wii Sports and all these like huge icons of the Wii era were brought to light at that conference. I remember watching, because I burned that to a DVD, and I watched the DVD of that press conference like 4 or 5 times between like June and was it December when the Wii actually came out. I watched it like 4 or 5 times. It was I was really excited for that one. So that was, to me, it was also, a really, really good E3 to be part of.
Yeah, and that was before social media. So, well, I mean, I guess Facebook was around by then, but Twitter wasn't. So I was getting, I don't want to say a forum starting with N was getting pretty popular then. We don't talk about that place anymore. I met people through there that I'm now friends with, who now are who are industry friends who are now doing bigger and better things too. So I think that was like the turning point for taking it to the next level. I mean, and not to discredit the DS either, because that was still going pretty well at that point. I don't think it was quite at the it was because that was 2006, and it didn't really take off till the DS Lite came out.
Yeah, the DS Lite was that year because that was when New Super Mario Brothers came.
Yeah, so I think had one train track of the DS slowly building, but then this whack of the Wii all at once, and then that's I remember we don't do it anymore, but I used to post 20 or 15 to 20 stories a day of just games coming out. It was just hang on. Nintendo's popular again. And now, 20 years or 15 years after that, I can't do that anymore. So it's really hard to cover all the popular games and all the things coming to the Switch in the same way I could have 15 years ago. But
absolutely. All right, well, let's open things up now and start, bringing everyone involved in the conversation. So how did everyone get started with Vooks in that case? And do we remember some of the earlier times of when we were Vooks readers? I'll throw it out to anyone to start.
Yeah, I'll jump in. This is my 5th year being involved with Vooks because I first started with Vooks writing for the site in mid 2016 because I sent Vook a pitch to write a feature article about what was my then current obsession in the Zero Escape series and how it was such a rare thing to have such a mature game on a Nintendo platform. Something that was quite dark in nature. Something that was on. I think the first one was on Nintendo DS. I think that was before 3DS. But on Nintendo DS, and something of that level of content wasn't really seen, other than perhaps Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars. And as fate would have it, Vook said, "Yep, go for it." And I started writing pretty regularly for then during. Probably, Vook, would you say during the lean years or towards the end of the lean years when the support of the Wii U had well and truly dried up?
Yeah, I think most of 2016 up until October 20th, 2016, when the NX was revealed to be the Switch. I think the preceding 3 years before that was very lean, yeah.
Yeah. So and prior to that, I like some of the friends of the show, such as Stephen Impson, who previously hosted the Vookcast. I know that he had a long history with Vooks, especially with the forums and that sort of thing. But I was a relative latecomer to the site and to the community. I only sort of came across the site through some uni mates who knew about the site and followed it because of the good Nintendo coverage. And so I'd probably only been reading the site since 2014 or 2015. And I got to a point where, well, I've really enjoyed video games. I've really enjoyed writing my whole life. Why not put the two together? And starting off for Vooks started what at the moment is, a bit of a freelance writing career in terms of video games. It's been good fun.
Anyone else? What about you, Ollie?
Okay, so there's a bit of a story behind this. Kind of. I started following Vook on Twitter probably in 2015. At first, it was because Vook tended to get real angry at some people online for being real dumb about certain things.
That doesn't sound like me at all.
And that was, it was enjoyable to watch. I had read Vooks obviously before that. It's kind of hard to be a Nintendo fan in Australia and not come across Vooks at some point. But yeah, and then it was sort of towards the end of 2016, sort of in that September area, I joined the Vooks Discord, which was fairly new at the time. I mean, Discord was fairly new at the time as well. And then I reached out to Vook probably about a month after that and said like, hey, I've got, all of my pre-orders secured for the Switch. So this was like just after the Switch had been officially revealed. I said, I've got all my pre-orders now and I'm getting like all of the games. And like, I did get all of the games. It was a terrible idea because there were some pretty bad ones. And like, if you need any reviews during that time, like in the busy launch period, just let me know. And then nothing really happened for a couple months. And then I think it was probably it was Switch launch day, I think, that Vook reached out to me and said like, hey, do you want to do a guide for how to access other countries' eShops on the Switch? So that was my first published piece, and then I did a couple of Wii U reviews after that. They're terrible reviews. Please don't go read them.
Yeah, do not read any of my reviews. Say more than a month ago.
But yeah, then I did a couple Wii U reviews. Just like smaller indie games, which were basically the other thing releasing on Wii U at that point. And yeah, I mean, like here we are, like almost 4 years later, and still writing reviews for weird little indie games. I mean, I do big games as well, but yeah, not much has changed in that time. I will say I'm glad we're sort of past the era of writing out Switch sales and 3DS sales and Wii U sales every single week by hand. That was just some of the worst times.
And you mean like, the latest sales? For
Yeah,
like
so
price
every
drops
single
and things
week
like
we would wait until like 1 a.m. and then go through on our 3DSs and Wii U's and Switches manually and see every single thing that was on sale and write it down and then compare it to the list of what was on there last week so we could have, the current sales and the existing sales. And yeah, we did that all by hand for like even like a good 2.5, 3 years after I joined. And like as far as I know, like you guys were doing it for almost like 5 years before that, right?
Yeah, I've been doing it since the DSi shop launched. So 1 week, like it used to be Friday 7 a.m. and then it used to be like Friday 8 a.m. depending on daylight savings, and then it changed to Friday nights for 1 year, and then back to Thursdays. That's all the reason why I had to spend like so much time to try and make it better, because there's no way you can try and do that manually anymore with the Switch. It's just impossible. With the Wii U, it was sort of like if the Nintendo had an eShop online for Australia, it would have been so much easier because there was less volume on the Wii U and previously. But just because it was so hard, we had to do it on the actual system, was a real pain in the butt. And yeah, that's why I had to get help to develop a system to just scrape the eShop and do it 90% automatically now.
Yeah, because like at the sort of in that first year of the Switch being around when we were doing those eShop posts, it was like, there were 3 or 4 new games each week and, another 30 or 40 games on sale. And now we're at the point where, there's like 25 games releasing each week and 190 sales. And it's like, well, that's a huge difference in like what we were doing and now what we have to do. So I think that was like a big thing for us, like trying to get that.
Yeah, and I felt terrible actually asking for having to ask people to waste their time on that. Like, would it really hung heavy on me doing that. So, I had to try and solve that. So, otherwise, I would have just given it up and just done the new releases. But it was hard to have something and then take it away.
And we got rid of the 3DS sales, and we still have people like ask us once a month, like, "Hey, why don't you do the 3DS sales?" And it's just like, I don't even know where my 3DS is right now. Like, I'm not going to manually go through and do all of that. Like, I think a lot of people didn't realize like how big of an effort it was, and like the fact that we were doing it at 1 a.m. on a Friday morning, or 1 a.m. on a Thursday night, like.
Yeah, because for me it was okay because it was 10 o'clock, but I would finish at 1 a.m. and God knows what time it was for you guys. So
yeah, I mean, it was at that point where we were like, stopping at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., sometimes even 4 a.m. if it was like a, this is the Christmas sales kind of one. And I was happy to do that, and I know Sam, who helped a lot with the 3DS sales, was happy to do that as well.
They've had a lot of people help out on that one.
Andrew, what about you? How did you start with the site?
Similar sort of start to Ollie, I suppose. I had followed the website for quite a long time. I forget how long exactly, but probably like 10 years or something like that. I've been reading Vooks. And when I first joined Twitter, which I still don't use Twitter much, but when I started, Vook was one of the first people I ever followed, I think. And eventually, I think it was a supernova in Perth at some point when I think Vook posted that he was going to be there, and I was like, hey, it'd be great to meet you. And so I met up with him and just introduced myself and said hello, and became a very vague contact over the space of the next few years. And then when the Switch sort of started to take off, and like I'd sort of done a bit of writing previously, but I sort of wanted to get back into it, and I sent him a message. I was like, hey, if you ever need anyone to help contribute to reviews or anything else for the website, I'd be happy to contribute and help out. Daniel was nice enough to give me a chance and get me started on, I think it was called Arc End. It's like a match 3 puzzler type thing, just to get started. And then a year later, I was reviewing Smash Bros. Ultimate, which was just nuts. So very thankful for the chance he took on me and the opportunity to join the website and contribute. And so it's been a good. So that was in late 2017, early 2018, so I first started. So, it's been good.
Awesome. Well, my start is a bit of an odd one, actually. I don't even know if Dan remembers this, but back in 2012, just out of nowhere, because I've been reading the site on and off before that, I probably would have visited the site every now and again when the Wii was coming out, because I was just thirsty for Wii news around that time, around the end of high school. But then in about 2012, when I was already writing for other sites, so, since then I've floated around at different sites and things, but I was working on a PlayStation site and another American site, and just on a whim, I was just like, oh, you know what, Wii U's coming out, and none of the sites that I'm writing for really care about Wii U, so I wanted to write something about that. So I just pitched him a Wii U Buyer's Guide, which I don't think is actually on the site anymore. And it was really janky. I made like a really terrible table in Microsoft Word, like it's like pretty badly, but Vook actually tidied it up a little bit and put that up, and that was kind of fun to put together, even though it's a bit laborious doing things like that, as you guys know, for covering site sales and things. But then I didn't reach out and pitch anything else for a few years after that, because I was working on other sites still, and then I did something like VR on the Switch or something like that, because there was a patent that went out just before the Switch had come out, I think. It might have been before it was even officially named the Switch, but there was some PR about some patent about a head mount sort of thing for the Switch to go into that could potentially work in VR or something. So I just wrote a piece about that, about the potential for Switch to fulfill all these different things, being a home console device, a handheld gaming device, and a VR device, which blows PlayStation and Xbox out of the water in that regard and stuff. And then, yeah, like early last year, early 2019 is when I decided to reach out and ask if there were any more indie games to cover or anything like that to help, just review indie games and things. And I think the first one that I did was Ape Out, which I actually really liked. I really liked Ape Out. Ape Out was so much fun. Super cool, jazzy inspired soundtrack where you just this giant ape just smashing the crap out of everyone. It's good fun. But we've talked a little bit about how the landscape of Nintendo has changed a bit, but what about Vooks itself as a site and as a community? Like, how does it set itself apart from other communities that might exist online? Is there anything that we do differently?
I think one of the big things is, I think on the whole, a lot of the websites and communities that exist around video games are pretty inclusive. It's more on the fringes of those communities where you find some of the nastier places, as is the case on the internet in general. But one thing I've really appreciated about Vooks in terms of the coverage and the community is that it's very very, very welcoming and very unpretentious in the way that it covers games and reviews and games and that sort of stuff. Is that, if someone wants to come and write, an interesting take on a game or a console or an op-ed about Nintendo in general, then it has a place on Vooks. Whereas there are plenty of other sites that don't care to do deep dives on particular topics or don't have the resources or aren't interested in doing particular things. Vooks is a really great place to let creativity flourish. And that's what I've, from my perspective as a writer, had been such a great little sort of incubation space to let me, try new things and, sort of practice my craft a little bit before pitching elsewhere and getting paid work down the line. And I know that's been the case for other writers who are active in Australia at the moment. One that comes to mind is one I work with regularly, Hope Corrigan. She was a former Vooks writer, and she's doing bigger and better things as well. But then it doesn't matter where you end up or who you end up writing for. You always enjoy coming back to Vooks and writing something for Vooks, or just spending time with the Vooks community, because it's just filled with such lovely people, and you make such great friends doing it as well. Because I sort of had a digital friendship with Vook for a few years, but didn't actually get the chance to meet him in person until PAX Australia last year. And it was great because my partner Laura and I, we were just chatting away with Vook, as if we'd known each other for years, which is quite true, but just not in a face-to-face setting. So the video games, the writing is a great and significant part of the community. But the dare I say, the friendships we made along the way are the best part.
Absolutely. And I will say that as someone who has bounced around on a wide range of websites, some of them I've been with, for multiple years at a time. It has been really nice to actually be part of a team that does talk to each other. Things aren't just walled off between people. We can get together like this and do a podcast and have things mixed up and have different opinions and different personalities and things. And from my perspective, at least in my time of being with the group, it has been very respectful sort of relationships between people. We don't rub each other the wrong way so much or start arguments or anything like that, which I very much appreciate. I do really, really enjoy that about Vooks.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that sort of extends to our Discord as well. I'm pretty active in the Vooks Discord. I think I technically own the Vooks Discord right now. There's some weird thing about server ownership where just it gets shuffled around. But it's one of the things that we try to do in the Vooks Discord a lot is just make sure everybody does feel heard and feel safe. So we have these conversations about what games we'd like to see on Switch, or somebody will come in and say, is this game any good, or does anybody know where I can get my Switch repaired? And there's always somebody there to give an answer basically right away. One thing that you won't get an answer on in the Vooks Discord is if somebody wants to play Metroid Federation Force, which always comes up. It's like once every couple of weeks, somebody comes in. It's like, does anybody here play Metroid Prime Federation Force? It's like, how is this still like an active thing?
That's fantastic.
Maybe for the next book club.
Yeah,
maybe. Yeah, it's. I think we try to run a very approachable tone in our articles as well and our reviews. We don't swear in any of the content that we do. We don't talk down to people. I think like one of the best things about basically every writer that we have is that it's not so much like, I'm a game reviewer and this is, my word is final or anything like that. Like all of the reviewers that we have and all of the reviews that we put out are more of a like, these are my experiences with the game. Let's have a conversation about that. And I think that's like a really important thing because like I read a lot of reviews and I write a lot of reviews and like there's a lot in the sort of review space that is like, this is a formal, serious, pretentious thing. And I just I don't think that's the best way to get through to people.
Or just angry nerds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like one of the things we've started doing in the Discord lately is if I've written a review or if Paul or sometimes even Vook, and I know that there are other writers as well that are more than willing to do it, is that like when we do a review, we'll have an AMA in the Discord. So, is there anything I didn't cover in the review? Is there anything you'd like to know?
Does this specific button do this specific thing at this specific time? Because some people have really specific questions about games that I won't cover because, I'm not looking for that kind of stuff or, I'm just having fun with the game and then it's really serious and someone loves that game so much that it's like, well, yeah, I can answer that for you. Easy.
I think just bouncing off what Ollie said as well about people just being... I don't know, I guess respectful with their opinions or whatever in reviews and stuff. It's something that we definitely don't, at least from my experience, maybe it's been different before, I'm not sure. It's not like when we join the team that we get a stern talking to and it's like, this is how you write your reviews and we aim to do it this way or anything. It just seems to be that people are sort of with the same sort of mindset and approach to reviewing games or having an opinion about games tend to float towards Vooks, which is great, I think. People are a lot more open. It is a lot more about that one person's experience and how they sort of, balance that opinion about those experiences as well. We don't take, we don't go into a review being like, this game is terrible, give it a 2 out of 10, make them suffer, blah, 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 or anything like that. It is just a lot of, respectful conversation. I guess even sort of enlightening conversation as well, which really helps. I don't know. Does anyone else feel differently?
Yeah, like we've given games a low score before, and very rarely on one particular occasion I can think of, people have taken it very poorly. And our reviews are never, like you said, trashing something. If something gets a 1 or a 2, it's not like, wow, this game sucks, don't buy it, spend your money on, I don't know, shoe inserts instead. It's well, yeah, it's you got a good idea here. It's a bit fundamentally flawed. Like it looks good, that runs well, but like I didn't have any fun with it, and I guess that's the whole point of it. And I guess with my reviews personally, I know I'm not like a super duper writer, because otherwise, I wouldn't have so many typos and grammar mistakes. But
we all have that.
So yeah, I prefer to make it a journey and a story rather than like this game does this. It's really good. Oh, it runs at 60 frames a second. Like, I'm not going to pretend to be Digital Foundry when I'm not. I can't even tell if a game's running at 60 half the time.
For sure.
And I think adding
this being said.
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, Vook, about the a game being 1 out of 10 or whatever by shoe inserts instead. On that note, I would argue that Troll and I probably would be better suited for shoe inserts than playing as a game.
Yeah, it could be an odor eater.
Oh boy, that was a time. That was oh gosh.
I guess that's the thing. I'll bring it up, like, because one, there's always another indie review game to review, and two, it's really hard to tell which ones are going to be good. Like, some indie games have amazing artwork, and the PR I get from them, hey, look, that looks really like official, like, and then that can be the worst game ever. But then I'll get a code in the inbox that says, hey, I'm from this country and I'm making this game. Can you try it out? And then it's an amazing game. I can't think of any specific examples like that, but because I've got like 400 inbox codes in my inbox a week. Like, it's ridiculous.
That's a good point, because one of the lessons I learned early was, from the indie perspective, is that, with indie teams, it's usually a single person or a very small group of people who are stretched so thinly for resources, making these games as a passion project to try and make it in the industry, that there's no joy to be found in dunking on them or tearing them to shreds or that sort of thing. I remember one of the reviews I wrote during the end of the Wii U phase was an indie puzzle game that it was okay, but there was just something about it that was a little bit off. That the timing of the controls didn't quite work, which made it unnecessarily or more frustrating than it perhaps should have been. And I gave it like 2.5 out of 5. But there was a turn of phrase that I used in it, which I came to regret, because it was essentially a bit of a put down and a bit of a dunk on what the developer had tried to achieve. And following that, Vook did gently suggest to me that these are indie guys. We not that we want to go easy on them in terms of give them a higher score just because they're indies, but to acknowledge that they don't have the resources that AAAs do or the resources that bigger developers do, and that we don't need to trash them or don't need to twist the shoe down while we're writing about it. And that's I think that in addition to my years of watching Good Game for many years on ABC TV, which contributed to sort of my voice and my approach with games writing and any sort of games and media coverage, is that I always try and approach everything I do as a celebration of gaming and a celebration of the good stuff that's out there, and to make valid criticisms when they're there to be made, but to do so from the perspective and from the lens of trying to build others up, as opposed to tearing others down and trying to have a viral Rolling Stone review that absolutely has zinger after zinger of just absolute dragging someone through the mud. So yeah, that was a lesson and an experience that I thought Vook handled really, really well, and it's one that I've taken with me ever since.
I think it also helps keep us humble in a way as well, considering that we are a very independent site. Like, we have little to no sponsorship at all. We don't have like big advertising deals or anything like that, or work for a corporate overlord or anything. Everything we do is entirely self-sufficient, and mostly off the hard work of Daniel as well, managing things behind the scenes for us. So that helps us keep perspective on that as well. Like, we are an indie site that does review a lot of indie games, so there is that sort of empathy that we can have towards that sort of process as well. So maybe that helps feed into that too.
It's much easier to criticize than it is to create.
Yeah, or even just be constructive.
I mean, to that point, I'd like to say, like, I do a lot on the website, but the website wouldn't be as good as it is without the help of everyone who's ever contributed to it in 20 years. So, like, I waste my time on the website a lot doing stupid stuff, but some of the best some of the best stuff comes from everyone else. Yes, maybe 20 years ago I shouldn't have put my name on it and called it something else, like Nintendo GameCube Hotspot or something, but that wouldn't have aged particularly well either. But it's not, I feel uncomfortable taking the credit for it because I know how much other people have worked on it over 20 years, you know, and some of them don't do it now. Some of them did one article and felt good about it. And I'm happy that they could do that and contribute to the melting pot of the website. Like, so I just want to say thanks for everyone, current and past, because it's got my name on it and I do a lot, but it would not be the same site if it was just me doing it. So.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm sure we're all very grateful of that. We've got a couple
just remember, there's always another indie game to review. So if anyone wants to,
absolutely. Got some more discussion topics here, but I don't know. We could just kind of do away with them. They're kind of just talking about Nintendo's attitudes and changes over time, which I don't think we really need to talk about that much. I'm more curious, Dan, now that you've mentioned it, making the site your name, was there any other consideration for a name for the site before Vooks?
No. Before we had the domain name, it was Vooks.gamespage.com because GamesPage, there used to be a thing where you could get a free subdomain. And
like GeoCities.
There was a so you could have GeoCities / dramatic tortoise 64 or something, right? But there was there was this thing, I don't know why, it was like in the early 2000s, people had like 10 different domain names. It was like Games Page or Car Talk or blah, blah, blah. And you could put whatever you want in front of it. And that's where I got that from. And all Vooks.gamespage.com linked to was my hosted ISP space, which was 10 megabytes. So it was like my isp.com.au // my mum's username for the isp.index.html. You can find it if you really look in the Internet Archive. It's not great, but it wasn't until 2003 that we got that domain name, and then it's like, well, if I don't use it for a Nintendo site, I might be able to use it for anything else. It could be a portfolio or but I used to have to go to a bank and send a check in US dollars to pay for it, and it was $25 US a month.
Gee.
Which back then, because the Aussie dollar was the opposite way, it was actually cheaper. And now it's not. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's start wrapping things up then. We've gone through a nice little jaunt down the last 20 years of Vooks. What about the future of Vooks? Is there anything in particular that you would like to see, Dan, from the site? Or is there anything that anyone here still thinks that we can probably endeavor to do more with Vooks?
Yeah, so I guess the thing with Vooks is that no matter what the internet does, we've done something around it. So we had a forum, and it was a really good place, and I have a lot of friendships from there, and so do a lot of other people with other people. And then we got Facebook, and then we got Twitter, and now I'm not making a TikTok, but
Not yet.
there'll be something else. And I guess we'll adapt to what comes, because Nintendo is inherently crazy, and we can't judge what they're going to do next. Like, everyone says, oh, there'll be a Switch Pro, but there might be a Switch that, I don't know, beams into your eyeball one day, so we'll have to cover that. So I don't know what I'm doing in the future. The site itself, like physically, the HTML and all that, I really want to get it cleaned up, and that's something on me because I'm the developer. But as for the coverage we provide, at the moment, I think we're pretty good. We'll have to figure out a better way of covering these indie games so they can get some attention, the really good ones. And I want to ask a few developers, are they happy to do I have this crazy idea, like people do it, but I want to sort of like a review in a tweet, which sounds really like lazy, but you know, if you put a bit of video towards it of a super cut of what you've played, you could talk over it. Just some sort of idea to get through all the reviews, and because I mean, I hope I can cover everything, but I get an email and say, "Oh, can you review this?" And I'm like, it got to the point where I can't reply to them all. So I think that's
even like my inbox is like that. I get, you know, probably nowhere near as much as you do, but I get a pretty decent amount of developers in my inbox saying like, "Hey, can you review this game?" And like, I don't have the time. Like, I don't know anybody else who has the time to do that. So I feel bad that, like, you know, and like they'll send, you know, check-up emails like saying, "Hey, you know, did you get my last email?" And it's like, I really wish I could reply to you and give you like good news that I'm gonna like review your game, but like I just can't. And like that's a crappy feeling to have, because like I wish I could dedicate so much space to your game, but like at the end of the day, we're just like a bunch of people with lives outside of the website as well. So
yeah. I mean, I have a lot, like I have a notepad of whole sorts of crazy ideas that I'd like to do. Feature retrospectives, I guess, on the launches of consoles, but specifically for Australia. Like, what was it like at midnight in Wollongong on November 17th, 2001, you know, like how did the GameCube launch in Australia, and how did it feel to be at that time? Because I've lived through it, but being in Perth, we didn't have midnight launches and stuff like that. So I'd like to get people's perspective on that kind of stuff. Like I remember in 2003 when I was watching the V8 Supercars, and there's like the replay is sponsored by GameCube. I'm like, holy crap, Nintendo's advertising? Like, and now there's like a Switch ad every 6 seconds on Foxtel from Mario Kart, and it's just like, you know, 15 years ago, it was hard to get people to be excited about Nintendo, and now they're I guess back. In quotes, unquotes, you know, Pokemon with Pokemon Go, it's been a joy covering that. But yeah, there's not just like the news and the reviews, but also I'd like to capture the feeling of being an Australian Nintendo fan, I guess. Does that sound weird? But I don't know the best way to do that yet.
So,
and that's content. That's content that'll live on. You know, like we write a story of games coming out, 1,000 people read it, and then no one reads it a month later. Some of the good stuff that you guys have read and then the other people have read gets hits every day, and you know they're reading like the stuff Andrew's done, the 3DS retrospectives. People are still reading every day,
which is a fantastic series, by the way. People should definitely look into those.
Thanks.
And I smile when I see it in the hits. Like my GameCube can't run the 3DS game. No, what is it? GameCube can't run. No, 3DS can't run GBA games article from like 7 years ago. But it still gets read at least once a week.
We still get like comments on it like every now and then as well. Like,
and like, oh, you're wrong because this game is on it. And then I'm like, well, you need like the warning like The Guardian has. Like this article is 12 years old. Yeah, that's where I'd like to go, I guess. I did have something else, but I've forgotten what I was going to say. Yeah.
That's all right. People can follow you or throw that. So you can re-answer that question back in like the Discord AMA or something like that if that ever comes up. Easy to do. Anyone else's quick final thoughts on that, on the future of Vooks?
Well, I just want to like point out that like we're always looking at new types of content. I've currently got a whole bunch of notes in my ideas notebook, which is all about looking at sort of the ways that Nintendo has interacted with the country. I guess. One of the things that like I think is like really interesting is that like Nintendo is like the reason that every McDonald's in the country has Wi-Fi.
That's a good point. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Like, because they were the ones who rolled out that thing. They teamed up with Telstra to do that, and I'd really like to
the Nintendo
track
Wi-Fi
down
connection.
some of the people. Yeah, I'd like to track down some of the people involved in that and sort of find out how it happened.
I forgot about that.
So, yeah, there's a lot of like really interesting things that Nintendo's done and will continue to do, and we're always looking at ways to shine a spotlight on some of those more interesting things.
Yeah, I'm in a similar sort of vein. I mean, at the moment I do a lot of reviews, but I like to sort of try and I'd like to start to explore some different, sort of more interesting discussion pieces and sort of features and that sort of thing. Like the 3DS series was sort of one of them, or even just sort of doing more random things like the Game & Watch review that I put up earlier this week. Just sort of things that sort of are a little bit outside of the mold, I think. Just a good opportunity to do something a little bit different. But yeah, that's what I'd like to sort of do going forward. So we'll see. I've got plenty of ideas as well. So
I'd like to make the Vookcast a little more dynamic. So I'm still thinking of new ways to do that. And I've got some plans starting after this 200th episode. So keep an ear out for that.
Oh yeah, we also have Vook Club, which we'll be returning next month. I had to take a quick break this month because I had to deal with some family stuff, but Vook Club will be coming back next month. And
yes. Oh,
yeah, so
which will be on Andrew's recommendation, Metroid Prime Federation Force.
Absolutely.
Good luck finding a crew to do that episode.
So I guess I got to, with the mention of Vook Club, yeah, like the Patreons who pay for the site to keep going. And I know the dark mode's broken and I can't fix it. So I'm going to have to look at maybe giving it to everyone and then giving the Patreon something awesome instead. Patreon really stuffed us up with that because I have a whole bunch of crap that game publishers send me and I don't want it. I want to give it to people. But Patreon won't let us do that. So they won't, unless you're subscribed, you have to give one thing to everyone on the same tier because they were going to shut us down.
The technicalities.
Yes, it's all US-based lottery stuff that applies to us somehow because they can't be seen to be holding a lottery or something like that. Which
even though plenty of other Patreons do that, but like that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah. So I've got to figure out a better way to support those guys who support us, and that's my, I guess, thing for over the Christmas break to try and figure that out.
Fair enough.
Not that we have a break because Nintendo doesn't care about Christmas. So,
well, my final question is actually probably directed to Vooks, but if anyone else wants to throw in as well, after all these years, after 20 years of Vooks.net, is it safe to say that Nintendo is finally doomed?
Oh, of course. Just imagine if there hadn't been a pandemic this year and Animal Crossing hadn't come out or had come out in its original release date, clearly they would have shut up shop.
Clearly, absolutely. And I think we're all in agreement with that one, aren't we?
Yeah. So until the next catastrophe happens, and they are doomed, of course, because the PS5 and Xbox Series, whatever. Yeah, I had to think about that. Good naming there, guys. Because they're sold out now, but next week they'll have a restock, so they'll be doomed by then. So next week, doomed.
Sure. Easy. All right, we've done it. That's
just wait for the Switch U.
Oh, yeah. Is it an add-on or is it a new console?
Who knows?
Yeah. It comes bundled with Wii Music.
Oh yeah, banger! All right, well that about wraps up this week's special Vookcast episode 200 and a 20th anniversary look back. Be sure to visit the site www.vooks.net for all your Nintendo news, reviews, and everything in between. To keep up to date, follow the site on Twitter. That's at vooks.net, all spelled out, or jump on over to our Discord at bit.ly/Vooks Discord, all lowercase, by the way. Ollie, where can people find you online?
You can find me either at said Discord or on Twitter, which is at Chocobalt, CHOCOBALT.
And what about you, Chris?
You can find me on Twitter primarily at BibbyBoy. Just check the show notes for spelling.
And what about you, Andrew?
You can find me on Twitter at Drowning Thunder.
And Daniel?
Yeah, you know where I am.
That's at Vooks64, right?
Yeah.
Easy.
If you want crappy memes and complaining about, everything.
And you can find me on Twitter at Mangello, that's MANJELL0, and on Twitch at Mangello Show. No zeros there. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next fortnight. Bye-bye.